In the long, winding history of America's darkest crimes, there is one name that rises above the rest. Not because he was flashy, not because he taunted police with riddles or left theatrical signatures, but because of the sheer, staggering scale of his violence. For decades, he was almost invisible, a drifter moving silently across the highways, in and out of motels and homeless shelters, leaving behind bodies that no one connected, women whose deaths were forgotten by a system that never bothered to ask too many questions. His name was Samuel Little. Between 1970 and 2005, he strangled women in more than a dozen states, leaving them in fields, behind factories, in ditches and alleys. He would later confess to 93 murders. Investigators have since confirmed more than 60 of those confessions, making him the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States. Born in 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia, Samuel's beginnings were steeped in neglect. His mother was a teenager, unprepared and unable to care for him. He was sent to Ohio to live with his grandmother. School records tell the story of a boy restless, distracted, prone to trouble. Teachers said he had flashes of cruelty, a temper that erupted without warning. He struggled academically, and soon he drifted away from school altogether. By his teens, Samuel was already in trouble with the law: petty theft, assault, burglary. Jail became a revolving door. Each time, he came out harder, more disconnected, more invisible. In the 1960s, he wandered across America. He survived through crime, shoplifting, burglary, scams. But beneath the surface, darker urges were growing. He later admitted that from a young age he fantasized about strangling women. There was, for him, a sexual thrill in it. He liked the intimacy, the closeness of his hands around a throat, the moment he could watch life fade away. Unlike knives or guns, strangulation left fewer obvious marks, especially on women whose lives were already precarious. His first murders began in the early 1970s. He picked women who lived at the margins: sex workers, drug users, runaways, women who, in his mind, would not be missed. He would charm them into his car, sometimes buying them drinks, sometimes promising them food or drugs. Then, once alone, he struck. His large hands closed around their necks, squeezing until their bodies went limp. He dumped them like trash in fields or alleys, places where their deaths were dismissed as accidents, overdoses, or exposure. And with every kill, he grew bolder. Through the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, Samuel Little moved from state to state: Florida, Mississippi, Ohio, Louisiana, Texas, California. He followed highways like lifelines, drifting with no permanent address, no paper trail, leaving behind devastation that no one connected. In Los Angeles in the mid-1980s, 3 women were found strangled and dumped in alleys. At the time, no one thought of Samuel Little. He was arrested for theft, for assault, but never tied to murder. He lived like a ghost, known to police only as another repeat offender, while the true scope of his crimes remained hidden. He understood the system and he exploited it. He knew that by targeting women whom society already discarded, he could keep killing without consequence. Sex workers, women addicted to drugs, homeless women, he believed they were already dead in the eyes of society. And tragically, he was right. Their disappearances rarely sparked headlines. Their bodies were too often written off as overdoses or natural deaths. Police departments in different states rarely shared information, and databases weren't connected. America's size and fractured legal system became his shield. In 1982, Samuel was arrested in Mississippi for assault. In Florida, he was tried for murder, but the evidence fell apart. In 1984, he was charged again in California with killing another woman. Again, the jury acquitted him. Twice the system had the chance to stop him. Twice it failed. And with each failure, Samuel grew more confident. By the 1990s, he was deep into his spree. He strangled women in abandoned lots, in motels, in the backseat of his car. He targeted women late at night, alone, vulnerable. He claimed later that each killing was etched in his memory, that he never forgot a face. He spoke of their last moments as if they were frozen snapshots, images burned into his mind. For him, these weren't crimes to hide from. These were trophies. In 2012, Samuel Little's decades-long reign of terror finally began to unravel. Living in a homeless shelter in Kentucky, he was arrested on a drug charge and extradited to California. There, investigators tested his DNA against cold cases. It matched 3 unsolved murders from Los Angeles in the 1980s. The women had been strangled, their bodies dumped in alleys. This time, there was no escape. In 2014, Samuel was convicted of those 3 murders and sentenced to life in prison without parole. For most killers, that would be the end. But for Samuel Little, it was only the beginning of his darkest confession. In 2018, Texas Ranger James Holland began visiting Samuel in prison. Holland, patient and calculating, built a rapport with the aging killer. And then, like a floodgate opening, Samuel began to talk. He confessed not just to 3 murders, not to a dozen, but to 93. Investigators were stunned. Serial killers exaggerate, they inflate their numbers for notoriety. But as Samuel described his crimes, the details were horrifyingly precise. He remembered the towns, the streets, the clothing, the jewelry. He recalled scars, hairstyles, even the way the women spoke. His memory was photographic. To prove his confessions, Samuel began to draw. Using colored pencils, he sketched portraits of his victims from memory. Dozens of faces emerged, women of different ages and races, but most of them poor, marginalized, forgotten. His drawings were hauntingly detailed, their eyes staring out of the paper as if pleading for remembrance. Investigators released the portraits, and families recognized loved ones who had vanished decades earlier. The FBI cross-referenced his confessions with unsolved cases, and one by one, they matched. By 2019, more than 60 of his confessions were confirmed, making Samuel Little the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history. The way he spoke of his murders chilled even seasoned investigators. He described strangulation as his thing, his release. He said killing was like food to him, necessary for survival. He showed no remorse, only satisfaction. He compared himself to an artist, saying each victim was etched in his mind like a painting. And yet, for all his boasts, there was no glory. There was only cruelty. His victims were not pawns in a game, not sketches on a page. They were women with lives, with families, stolen by a man who saw them as disposable. The revelation of Samuel's crimes forced America to face difficult truths. For decades, law enforcement had failed these women. Their deaths were misclassified, their cases ignored. Society had failed them too, dismissing them as addicts, sex workers, or drifters. Samuel exploited that indifference, and in doing so, he exposed it. His story is not only about his evil, but about the system's negligence that allowed him to kill again and again. For the families, his confessions brought both relief and heartbreak. Some finally learned what had happened after years of silence. Others saw the faces of their daughters, sisters, mothers in Samuel's sketches, realizing that the man who killed them remembered their features better than the police ever had. Closure came, but it was bitter, wrapped in the knowledge that justice had come too late. Samuel Little died in December 2020 at the age of 80 in a California prison. He left behind no remorse, no apology, only the legacy of his own words. His drawings remain with the FBI, still used to identify victims. Some women remain nameless, their families never found, their stories unfinished, but they are remembered now not as faceless statistics, but as women who deserved life. What makes Samuel's story so terrifying is its banality. He was not a monster from nightmares, not a figure of spectacle like Bundy or Dahmer. He was ordinary, a stocky man with a gravelly voice, moving from town to town, living in shelters, blending into the background of America's endless highways. His camouflage was his invisibility, and that is what makes him unforgettable. That a man can kill nearly 100 women across 3 decades and remain unseen, because his victims were women society had already chosen not to see. His case has left lessons, painful but necessary. It has shown the need for stronger national databases, for cooperation across jurisdictions, for taking every disappearance seriously no matter who the victim is. Most of all, it has shown the cost of indifference. Samuel Little thrived because society allowed him to. He thrived because no one looked for the women he killed until it was too late. When we speak of Samuel Little, we do not speak of him for his glory. We speak of him for his victims. 93 women, each with a name, each with a face, each deserving of remembrance. His sketches, chilling as they are, serve as their testimony, a way of saying, we were here, we mattered, we are not forgotten. And so this story is not his, but theirs. A story of voices silenced, of lives stolen, of a society forced to reckon with its failures. Samuel Little may be gone, but the women he killed remain in memory, their faces staring back at us from his drawings, demanding that we do not look away again. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Crimson Narratives for more haunting stories from the darkest corners of human history. Because only by remembering can we honor the victims, and only by telling these stories can we guard against the monsters who walk among us.